Ladies and gentlemen, whether you've been watching me for a long time or you have absolutely no idea who I am, you should know that one thing has eluded me in the world of chess, and that is the Grandmaster title. You know, there are more billionaires on planet Earth than there are Grandmasters. It is one of the most difficult achievements that a person can attain. But sometimes Grandmaster Levy does in fact emerge, and in this video I will show 3 games to you that hopefully entertain you, but also teach you a couple of things about openings, middle games, attacking chess, and so on. I am approaching 3,000 on chess.com. My peak is now 2,970. I have been playing very good chess over the last quarter, maybe 3 to 4 months, and I'm excited to share it with you. As always, these are from tournaments on chess.com, so we might have repeat guests. In fact, the very first guest of today's episode, I did play recently, and I feel bad. I don't mean to keep featuring Grandmaster Rustemov in my videos, but that's just how it goes. Then I will show you a very, very nice and back-and-forth game that I played against Mexican international master, and then a game against none other than Wonderful Time. You might have seen this person play against Hikaru thousands of times online. He's played against Magnus in the Speechless Championship. This is GM Minlay, Vietnamese Grandmaster. All these games, very fun, very dynamic, true to my style. And the very first one in particular begins with me on total tilt. I played knight to a6. Now, this is called the Australian defense. I don't know why. Now, knight a6, of course, is a very bad move. You really shouldn't play like this. Then you're going to have to bring the knight back from the outskirts of the board. Really, it should be here. And, in the beginning of the game, you should be putting pawns in the center. Now, my opponent played the most principled move. Like, if your opponent is going to disrespect you with a knight move, he should go e4. Now, again, I didn't play this out of disrespect for my opponent. I was tilted from my previous loss. And sometimes you play dumb things when you're tilted. Now, the way you justify this setup, the only way, is you have to then play the move c6. And the point is, you're trying to put this knight on c7, and you're trying to play a drunk Caro-Kann. You're trying to play a Caro-Kann, but you had a little bit too many, pints. Now, here, this move, bishop takes knight, looks very natural because you give up your bishop and then black, gets their pawn structure damaged and it's really ugly. But there's a trick here, and you can actually catch some people like this. You have queen a5 check. And this is very annoying because now white has to go here and you don't actually damage your pawn structure. You just got a bishop for a knight. It's actually a very good deal. And then after knight f3, you play knight f6, they develop. Let's say here, you develop, and ooh, you see, I'm allergic to giving up the bishop pair. They can't castle, so most people will try to trade queens with you, and by this point, black has a completely fantastic position. My opponent, sadly, did not fall for such idiocy, and, played just very principled, knight out, bishop out, and white can also castle. White can move out the other knight, and that is what he did. And then I took, and I turned the game kind of into a Tarktikau or Caro-Kann with the move knight f6. Now, if he took me, I have the option to take with the pawn or the g-pawn, but he played a move that I don't like. Retreating the knight from the center of the board can't really be good. It's kind of a loss of time. Like, if anything, white should castle. White should maybe develop this bishop or try to make some sort of progress by going here. Now he gave me a target, and again, I can play something like g6 or bishop, bishop g7 castle. But I'm on full tilt, so we just go full steam ahead, trying to take his head off, h5. A flank pawn attack with the intention to attack the knight, and then get the pawn maybe even to h3 in case he's going to castle in that direction. And he does, in fact, play the move h3. h3 is a really good move. h3 prevents bishop g4, knight g4, and the pawn getting to h3. Not in one move. But, if I play h4, which is what I did in the game, and then he goes knight e2, from the opening, white just has a very comfortable position because he can just win my pawn. He can just totally win my pawn. Now, after 10 moves were made in this game, I'm just thinking like, well, this is really stupid. I am a pawn down, I'm tilted, but you know what? I'm not just going to fall over and lose the game. What pawn have I lost? I have lost an h-pawn. Now, keep in mind, plus 1.2 at the 2900 level is also not plus 1.2 at the 900 level, or even the 1900 level. This is still a very complicated position for like 99.99999% of chess players. Why? Because the pawn that I lost is an h-pawn. If anything, practically speaking, black has an advantage here. That's a crazy take, but what's the point? The point is the open file. And so if white castles this way, there could be some practical problems. And of course, I'm going to castle this way so that my rook can stay over here. I don't think this is an easy position at all to play for white at most levels of chess. At this level, it should be easier, but I develop my bishop, and I bring my knight into the middle, and what I'm going to do from here is I'm going to develop my queen, and I'm going to castle queenside. So queen to b6, targeting this pawn, not the best move. I wanted to go queen d7, but then I would get hit with this knight. I wanted to go queen d6 or queen c7, but if I do that, he's just going to bring the bishop back and improve his position, which is why I brought my queen over here. He went rook b1, and I long castled. Now, he is much better here, of course, but the way to proving this advantage, not so straightforward. And then he played the move bishop g3. I jumped my knight into the middle of the board because I'm looking to get his bishop, and I took his bishop, and then I played this nice move e6. And the point of e6 is I have now glued the bishop to this square, so he's not going to be able to remove it. If he tries to go after me with c4, I play knight to b4, and this is the benefit of having the bishop pair. My bishops just snipe his center. They don't make it easy for him to move. If you play without an eval bar, this is not a simple position. Meanwhile, I'm constantly looking over here, and that is where the game is ultimately going to be won and lost, is me losing my h-pawn early on and opposite side castling. In opposite side castling, there are sacrifices and there are pawn storms. So he goes rook d1. I now bring my queen back because it served its purpose, and I reposition my queen to target this side of the board. He plays a3. a3 is a very simple move. The idea of a3 is that he's preventing knight to b4 if he plays the move c4. At this point, I do spot some cool tactics, like knight to e3. Knight e3 is a fork, and if he takes, then I take his knight on g3. That would have been very reasonable, but I played bishop h6. I thought my bishop was quite passive here, and then I want to go to f4 and add another attacker to this side of the board. I'm going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, and maybe 5 attacking pieces over there. He plays rook e1, which just feels a little bit too slow. And right here, I'm thinking, well, I've brought every piece to point it in this direction, except this one. So in 2 seconds' time, I brought my rook. It wasn't the best move, but I mean, now I have every piece pointed at his king. And what's going to ultimately happen is I'm either going to go g5, g4, and if I get the pawn to g4, just for example, like, look, a matter of like 2 moves, if I get the pawn to g4, it's -3 for black. 2 pawn moves, and it's -3. My attack breaks through, takes, now it's -5, and he's just getting absolutely walloped. And that's very instructive. It's very instructive how we are literally 2 moves away from the entire white position disintegrating. But there's one more thing, and I was very happy with myself when I discovered this concept. So knight goes back to f6. He goes to e5 with his knight. I play rook d8, adding some pressure. And right here, I'm like, wait a minute. I think he has insufficient defense around his king. Of course, I would like to play g5, but then he would take my bishop and take it with the queen and hit my king. I was like, can't I sack my bishop? One of the most famous sacrifices in chess is a bishop or a knight for kingside pawns. 2 of them generally, either on g and h, or h first, and then you get the second pawn. What makes this sacrifice work in this position? And I realized this is the best move in 2.6 seconds. How do you know? Well, after bishop takes h3, what I quickly scanned in my head is, what if white doesn't take? Well, there are no checks, and white can't do anything except take, because none of these pieces are actually threatening anything. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, when they take, and I take, I threaten the knight. So I get in with what's called tempo. I land on h3, and immediately white has to do something. When my rook is up here, I will then bring this rook, and then I'm also going to try to bring my queen. And the most important rule of a sacrifice, and this is in my second book, How to Win at Chess Next Level, not the one for beginners, but intermediate, out October 2026. What I like to say before you sacrifice like this, do you have 2 more attacking pieces than they have defenders? And I do. These are the defenders, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I have 5 to 2. White is outnumbered. Any way you slice it. He goes king g2. The king is not supposed to be a defender. I don't know where my win is, but I feel it in my soul. At this point, I'm finding this idea. Queen e7, queen d7. I want my queen over there, I want to get my queen over here. I also want to play g5, g4. I also want to play knight g4. It's not clear what he's supposed to do. He can't move this knight because I'm going to get access to certain squares, right? I'm also looking at queen a5 and queen h5. I'm 2-3 moves away from winning the game on the spot, and he panics. He panics. What he looks at here is, hey, what if we traded the queens by opening the position? But what he didn't realize is This move opens the plan for me to get here. And now he hits the panic button. Now he's like, what have I done? People don't like to be attacked. Even if they're 3,000 level grandmasters, people panic. He goes here, queen d7. Hey, it's game over. He goes knight to e3, and I'm like, there has to be something here. I have to be winning. Of course, I have bishop takes right away. I'm also looking at a rook sacrifice. Rook f3, rook h2. Both of these moves are good. The cleanest solution here would have just been to take this knight. And I have this problem of when I'm attacking somebody, I go immediately for the complicated stuff, whereas like he's stopping me from going here, I can just take the knight. It's actually very simple. I take the knight and I immediately win the game. I don't even know what move he would have to play there to survive. Instead, I sack my rook, obviously, because I'm looking at queen h3, and I'm also looking at, rook takes h2, but he runs away, and then I stupidly blunder here. In this position, I'm also, again, looking to sacrifice my rook, which would have been the winning idea, but instead I took his knight, and here I was like, oh, why did I do this? He can take my rook now. Now, it's still good for me. It's very dangerous, this position for white, but he can survive by taking my rook, but he doesn't. He goes here, and now I walk of shame the king like you wouldn't believe. Knight takes d5 check. The king goes to the middle. I take the knight. Now I'm up 2 pawns, and the king is running around the center of the board. He goes here. I play queen f6. He runs across to c4. I play rook takes f2. I'm now up 3 pawns, and the attack is swarming. All of my pieces are in the game. King b. I'm like, wait a minute. Rook h2. Nobody can defend this pawn. He goes bishop takes. I take on b2. His king makes it to the opposite side of the board. It actually looks like he's surviving. It actually looks like after pawn takes, bishop, I'm not going to take the bishop. I go b5 with king a5 and queen d8. King would go to a6, queen b6 mate. I made him run his king across the entire board and delivered a checkmate. This felt so awesome. You're panicking. You're playing a grandmaster. You got 30 seconds, 50 seconds on the clock. You're missing simple ideas like just like taking his knight on e3, because you're always looking for the glory. But then the king ends up traversing, the entire board to safety and lands on a6 and gets mated. And that's always a very nice feeling. So queen d8 check, we got the win. We hunted the king across the board. I was very proud of this one. Losing a pawn early, but fighting back, opposite side castling. In this game, we also showed opposite side castling. Very instructive game. This was against a Mexican international master, GM Estrada. In this game, I got a completely lost position from the opening. Completely lost. I totally screwed up. I mixed up my lines. I played one of my favorite French defense variations, especially for blitz. You will notice I do like to double these pawns, and I do like to castle queenside. I did it, against Rustemov, mostly out of necessity, but I do like to attack the king, and there is no cleaner way to attack a king than to castle queenside, because 8 times out of 10, your opponents do castle to the short side. Now, in this game, he played a little bit inaccurately in the opening. Like, he just gave me the pawn on d4, which was not good. But the problem with taking this pawn is, the position that you ultimately end up in with black is a little bit boring. You trade a lot of pieces, and I'm a player, I want to keep pieces on the board. For example, here, he could have went take, 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 take. And, like, I'm up a pawn, but I mean, this is looking a little bit silly for me. So I thought, you know what? I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go here. And that's a terrible move. Super terrible. What I should do, if anything, is I should develop my queen and just like long castle and hope for the best. This is a terrible move because he just goes back, and now not only am I not castling in this direction because I move my rook, my king is really weak. Like, he's threatening pawn to c3, access to c6, access here. What I should have done is I probably should have went bishop c5. I played a terrible move here. Terrible. I mean, I should have just developed the bishop and played principled. After this move, I am... Well, watch. He checks me, and I have to put my king in the middle. This is bad news. But from here, I take this position, and I play it like stockfish. So here, the best plan for white is not to rush. Which is, but by the way, like, that's really difficult to do. He plays a very human move. He just takes my pawn. I mean, it's a free pawn, and my king is in the middle, and I played the opening like a moron, and he's going to castle, bring his bishop, bring his rook. You can't really ask for a more natural move than taking a free pawn like this, especially considering the fact that this bishop is pointed over here, which means this A pawn is just going to promote. If he gets rid of this pawn and pushes this pawn, I'm just going to lose. I have no play. I can't do anything. So how am I going to take this position? How am I going to develop my pieces here? Now, the best plan for white was actually just to like develop and ignore the pawn. It's a little hard to do. So what is the best plan here for black? You've played like a total bozo in the opening. Your opponent has an extra pawn, better development. Your king is standing in the middle with his pants down. All right, I don't know what he's doing. They're about to call the authorities. What is the best plan here for black? The best plan is to play the position like a boss. F5. You know what the idea of F5 is? Counterplay. Nope. The idea of pawn to F5 is to put the king with the pawns. You want to be active. Oh, you want to be the big guy. You want to participate in the game. Okay, get out there and participate in the game. The way to activate the pieces here and protect the king at the same time is to bring the king forward. This is some gangster stuff. I bet no position has ever been reached like this before. The bishop cannot come here. The knight would take. So this knight is a key defender. And when he goes here, I play king f6, and I'm not even worse anymore. It's 0.9. That's hardly an advantage. From +3, when I played this game with f5, king f6, I actually felt like a genius because I knew what was about to happen. He is going to bring his rook here and attack my queen. Obviously, very natural move. And he can't castle that way because my queen is blocking, right? So he's going to castle this way. And it's a really deceiving position for black because what I'm going to do is I'm going to develop my bishop to the middle. Then I'm going to bring my queen over here, and I'm actually going to attack his king. Hidden in this jungle of a position is a ruthless kingside attack brewing upon the white king, because the white king has to go that way. Actually, the best move for white, after rook d1, right? Rook d1, and I put my bishop here. The best move for white, one of the best move here, impossible to find. Impossible. Even in a classical chess game, if I gave you 20 minutes to think about this position, you would not figure out the move for white. The move for white is bishop to c1. Undeveloping the bishop so the queen could go back here and this b pawn can move in the future, and maybe the bishop would come out on this diagonal and he would just be out of the way for the queen to be able to come back to the middle. And the best plan for white is not even to castle. You wait, you don't castle for a while because then I'm going to be launching an attack. It's very difficult to figure that out. My opponent goes rook d2. The idea of that move is to block this pawn from being attacked. But what that does is allow me time, and now I play h4. I've landed. Somehow, my absolutely absurd position with a king on f6, a bishop on d6, is really powerful. Because if he goes g4, I trap his bishop in the middle of the board. I trap his bishop. So he's now like, what is happening? So he ignores this and he castles, thinking like, okay, if Gotham takes, well, that would be really dumb because I would immediately open up the... But that's not what I'm going to do. I'm now going to use everything that I've done and play queen to g8. And as I sat there looking at the position, I couldn't believe my eyes. White doesn't have a move. The only move in this position for white is g4. Why g4? Because when I spend time taking this, you don't take this back. What you do is you play f4. And the idea behind f4 is that you have two rooks ready to attack the king. If I take en passant, well, that's stupid. You bring your rook. If I take like this, you take my bishop, then you get rid of the defense, and suddenly you have a huge attack on my king. Okay. Like, you have bishop d6, and then my king has to run away. I mean, you have to go g4 followed by f4. My opponent doesn't do that. He goes here. And now it's over. f4 traps the bishop. I don't even want the bishop. I want the king. Rook takes h4. I make this wall defended by 4 different pieces, and then my queen and my rook are going to come here. And yes, queen g4. Why? Because he goes king h1, and here comes the thunderous punch. Queen to g4, applying more pressure over here, ready to bring the other rook. Just like in the Rustemov game, the last rook, the rook that's not participating. He hasn't done anything. All he did was threaten this pawn. Now when my opponent goes f3, I play rook takes h3, sacrificing my rook, obviously. You know the drill at this point. The king goes to g1, the queen goes to g3, and the game's just lost. The game is lost because I'm threatening rook to h8, and rook to h1 mate, and that is exactly how the game ends. He plays rook e1 and he just resigns because he has no moves. Like, this is straight up insanity. He doesn't have a move here. He can run the rook away, but then I'm going to take the bishop, and then I'm going to win anyway. I don't know how this happened, because he gave me a check, and for 1/2 of a move right here, he had a +3 advantage, but he had to play bishop to e3, and he took my pawn, and I went f5, king f6, but I've never untangled my position with just walking my king around like this. I was really proud of this game. I thought this game was really nice. And the last game of this video was also really nice, even though I didn't win. I played this game, and I found a combination at some point that was extremely high level, and I do want to show it to you because it's so instructive. But then obviously I didn't handle the position well enough after that, and he beat me. So I played this setup with white by getting my bishop out. I took the knight, I went here, and I took the center, and we just have a very comfortable position. Here, black should castle and play the position slowly, but he went c5, and I have a few approaches here, but the one that I chose was very instructive. You know, he's trying to attack my center with his bishops and his pawn and his queen, and if I take, then he's going to prevent me from castling, or he's going to triple my pawns, which is really terrible. So what did I do? I castled. So for now, Minlay is going to take my pawn on d4. If he takes this, I'm very happy. I just support my center. If he takes this pawn, this diagonal is blocked. I castled already, and I play knight to d5. And he went bishop d6. Now, here, I simply took back the pawn on d4, but that was actually a lazy move. Pawn to e5 is even stronger. It's a very nice idea. You sacrifice your bishop. Sorry, you sacrifice your rook. And apparently, this is an okay position. None of that matters. Knight d4, knight c6, knight f5. I thought I was making some progress here. We traded, and I thought, okay, he's going to castle. But then he went bishop e5, which I thought was a strange move because I wanted to play this anyway, just sort of preventing anything. And then he went knight e7. I looked at the move knight e7, and I thought, okay, if I take, and he takes, like knight e7, and maybe I can give him a check, and then he's going to have to play king f8, but he's going to put his king right here, and I didn't expect it to be minus 0.8, but I thought I don't really have much. He has a very, very strong king. If anything, his bishop absolutely mogs mine, to use a little bit of Gen Alpha terminology. And for the older folks, that just means that, you know, he makes a fool out of my bishop. What do they call that? Something maxing now? I don't even know. Anyway, but I found a really cool idea. I'm to sacrifice the rook guy. So my alarm bells went off here to take the bishop. But then you're like, why would you take that doesn't make any sense at all. What's the follow-up? I just said you need 2 more attacking pieces than defenders when you sacrifice near the king, right? Let me show you. Here, I calculated that I could check, sack my rook, and pin him. And that's the best plan. He doesn't have a move. His king, his queen, and his rooks are all stranded on the last rank of the board. I am going to bring my rook here to target his queen, or here to target his king, and I'm going to bring my bishop here to target his king, or here to target his queen or his king. When I came up with this, I felt my brain pulsing. Even though I'm down 2 points, his position is terrible. It's going to take a huge effort to untangle. Now, he went f6, right? And so now I have to, the idea of f6 is quite straightforward. He just wants to make room for his king. Now, I know that his king is coming here. So maybe I should start with bishop to c4. That probably would make sense. In retrospect, that would have made the most sense because I don't actually know where I want to commit my rook. But I don't know. Do I go bishop c4? Do I go rook d1? Do I go rook f1? As I'm looking at the board now, it would have made infinitely more sense to start with bishop to c4. But I don't know where I'm going to commit my rook, right? So I think for a little bit, and I play rook f1. Now, rook f1's the wrong plan. I should have anticipated that the king was going to try to run away. I thought it didn't really matter, because in my head, I'm like, but it does matter. Bishop c4 is important. It's a prophylactic move, and it stops his idea. I went rook f1 straight away, because I thought, well, at least I can maybe sacrifice, and I know his king is going to be here, so I think it makes sense to put my rook here. He goes king f7, and I went bishop c4 now. The problem with this move order is he runs to g6, and he's actually a lot safer than I thought. Because my plan here was c4, activating the queen, which is, by the way, talk about board vision. Like, we take this for granted sometimes. c4 with the intention of transferring the queen over here to attack the king. His king is running around the board, but it's just safe enough. And he always has this check. So you always have to keep an eye on how your opponent can actually check you. He goes king h7. I throw my queen to the other side of the board, but this is just enough time for Minlay to survive. He brings his rook, and if he hides on h8, the only attack I'm going to have from this point forward is with my queen and my bishop. If I can get my queen and my bishop like this, I will beat him. If I can't, I'm going to lose. So I go like this, and now I play b3. A little bit slow, but I didn't want to lose my pawn. He plays rook c8, and now I should probably start doing something with my h-pawn. I play king h1 to make sure there's no checks on that side of the board, and he plays queen a5. So now here comes the counterplay. I'm closing the position from his rook and his bishop, but if I take on b7 and come back, then he's going to take my pawn. I'm like, I don't know. All right, let's go queen g6. I'm setting up the idea to play here and here, and if I get that, he's going to be in trouble. Now, I wanted to start with bishop here, but then if bishop here, he would play rook e8, and I wouldn't be able to move. So I thought, okay, let's be sneaky. Queen here, bishop here, bishop here. Now, if he plays rook e8 to stop bishop to e6, I don't know. I'll have to figure something out. But he plays a fantastic move here. It's a really, really smart move, and it's a move that basically puts the game away. And that move is not taking my pawns, none of that. He senses the moment, and he plays f5. This pawn sacrifice completely cuts the coordination of my position. I can now no longer put any bishop on this diagonal because I'm either going to have to take with the pawn or the rook. If I take with the rook, I get mated, so that's not going to work. Now, I could take with the rook like this if this was the position. That would be a different story, which is probably why I needed to move my h-pawn faster. I needed not to put my king out of the check. I needed to make sure I could always get off the back rank. I have to go here, and now he just builds up the fortress. He plays rook f6 and rook f8, and, well, he doesn't even take this. He takes this. And that's it. Because if I take on f5, back rank mate, h3 should have been played earlier. I go here, but it's just over. I tried to trick him, you know, put pressure on the pin piece, but maybe he would hang his queen. Shockingly, he didn't hang his queen, and I had to resign because my bishop is not going to be able to sustain the position. So he did a really nice job reversing the opening position on me very fast. But I was really proud that I found this positional rook sacrifice, rook for bishop, and just paralyzing his position. Now, if after f6 I had gone bishop c4, I actually don't know how he would have untangled here. I'm sure he would have found a way. He probably would have... Well, frankly, I have no idea what he would have played here. He probably would have went rook c8. I would have went bishop b3. Maybe he would have went a6. But if he plays a6, I play rook d1. So I actually don't know. I don't know what he would have done here. The computer finds rook c6, rook d1, rook d6 to defend the position. But he's still playing without a rook, and he's playing with a king just stranded on f8. And then I would have gone queen a7. And maybe knight d5 and bishop d5. And yeah, this would have been a super complicated endgame. I would have tried to play c4, b4, a4, a5. So, all in all, certainly an interesting day of chess. Complicated attacking games on opposite side castling. Very, you know, interesting positional sacrifices. And I will update you more and more as I play. I do feel like the level was quite high. I'm 2940 at the moment, 2950, pushing 3000. So, yeah. I'll give you an update of when I get there. Appreciate your support as always. It's early 2026, so recently Chess for Babies came out. I've been reading this book to improve my chess, and if you've gotten it for somebody, I do appreciate it. Some of you have even sent me testimonials with your babies reading the book. Absolutely adorable stuff. Maybe we'll do a photo contest in the future. That's all I have for you today. Get out of here.